Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Congressman Tim Huelskamp from Kansas.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Very good to see some Kansans here. But you know, 5 years ago, or about 5 years ago, Rick Santelli asked President Obama a pretty simple question. Are you listening to the American people? Clearly, the answer was and still is no. In the wake of corporate bailouts and $1 trillion stimulus, the answer was still no. When everyday people rose up and said to both political parties, enough was enough, the answer was still no. But not until Pelosi and Reid rammed Obamacare through did the grassroots fully respond with a fight. And a new grassroots movement, the Tea Party, burst upon the scene. This forced politicians and pollsters, consultants and lobbyists, Democrats, and yes, Republicans to take notice. The result was 63 new members of the House of Representatives, including me, the biggest and most conservative congressional class since 1938. Multiple new governors and hundreds of new state legislators. When we swept into the House in 2010, the Tea Party movement, our movement, did not stop there. For I believe it continues to move the House of Representatives issue by issue, but it is laborious work. But we are taking the Republican caucus and moving it away from the big government-loving, liberty-crushing policies of the last decades and moving it towards a liberty-oriented, limited government, freedom-loving approach. But we cannot get too cozy here, because while we might find a place in the Republican Party, I believe our natural home is in the Republican primary. Time and again, the media has printed our obituary, written, of course, by the establishment. And to paraphrase Mark Twain, reports of our death have been greatly exaggerated. I mean, who prints the same obituary every year hoping it is true? It is not only Obama and his progressive allies we are fighting against who comprise the insider class in D.C., but also the Republican elites and their consultants who never wanted the Tea Party in the first place. And by the way, have lost 2 straight presidential elections. Let me give you an example. When I arrived in Washington, I questioned the committee chairman as to why the rules he proposed were not much different than the committee rules by Nancy Pelosi. I said, can't we be more transparent? Can't we be more open? The chairman looked me in the eye and said, welcome to Washington. These are the rules. And that was the message to the majority maker class of 2010. Hey guys, thanks for giving us the speakership, our chairmanship, and yes, thanks to those Tea Party folks in this room, but now back of the bus. Back of the bus. Washington is threatened by what they cannot control. And they cannot control freedom-loving Americans, whether they call themselves Tea Party members or not. One of my favorite times is to look in my colleagues' eyes when a Republican leader is telling them to vote against their constituents, to vote against Americans, to vote against conservative Tea Party voters. I tell you, the look is clear. They are afraid of you. And while we're talking about leadership, isn't it high time we retired John Boehner's biggest excuse? Isn't it high time we retire John Boehner's biggest excuse? We only control 1/2 of 1/3 of the government. Friends, Republicans control the U.S. House, the very power of the purse. Not a dollar can be spent, according to Article 1 of the Constitution, without Republican approval. Not a new dollar can be taxed. And so to say that we're 1/2 of 1/3, ladies and gentlemen, our founders understood the preeminent branch of government is Congress, and the preeminent center of power is the U.S. House. It's time to quit worrying about the next election. Our Republican leaders are always worried about the next election. But it goes without saying, if you do the right thing, it will take care of itself. And one other thing as well, I'd like to encourage my colleagues, I say, let's join the Mark Twain caucus. Well, what are you talking about? Mark Twain once said, he said, do the right thing. It will gratify some people and astonish the rest. And you know what? I'll tell you, the Tea Party just continues to astonish Washington, D.C. and the mainstream media because we are about doing the right things, sticking to our principles. We are not for sale, and we are not going away. Movements in this country have generally taken a long time, from abolition, women's suffrage, to civil rights. And look how long progressives were pushing universal health care coverage by the government. And we have to recognize it will take some time. But as we fight to restore our nation to its greatness, we know it will not be overnight. We have had a great start. But we must continue on as if every month, every week, every day is our last chance to save the greatest nation in the history of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, we must believe our best is yet to come. God bless you, and God bless our country.